Hey guys, thanks for joining me again. I am back to the floor, so I was too lazy to bring in the chair. I once again have some notes prepared for you today. I actually realized while finishing prepping for this video that I believe I am putting more effort into these videos that get 100 to 200 views on YouTube than I did for my actual college classes. So I hope you feel very special. Anyway, today is a bit of an expansion and discussion on a video I found. I was last week, well, or at least a week before I recorded this. Hopefully I get this out promptly. It was a video that was actually apparently posted like 3 months ago, but only just popped up in my recommendations by Kiana Docherty? Not sure how to pronounce that. Can't believe someone would have the absolute audacity to have some type of weird, funky last name and then not say their name in their videos at all. Because I watched several of her videos. She doesn't say her last name. Like, how could you have a weird name like that, not say it, and then leave people hanging? It's like such a jerk move, inconsiderate, only like some type of lazy, low life. I think the reason YouTube recommended it to me is because it discusses like health, diet, like vaguely fitness related stuff, which is what my channel is. I do bodybuilding, I do talk about health and other things related to that. So it was good. I've been subscribed to her for a while, but as things go, especially for someone that has much better, higher produced videos, they may not post as often. So after I had watched all of her stuff however long ago, there was nothing new to watch. So YouTube stopped recommending it and then came back. So I went back and watched everything she's posted since then, or a lot of it. Before I start discussing the video today, because I'm expanding upon it and how what is discussed by the research article that prompted her to make her video, I'm discussing why their tentative conclusions of what they are poking at and the reasons why aren't really surprising from all my time having been in and around the fitness industry and what I've learned about health and nutrition. I want to discuss some of that, but I really do recommend watching her video first. Not only is it better produced, better edited, it is much better researched as well. And even the freaking person you have to stare at on camera is better looking and has a much better looking background and better lighting. So it's basically better in every way than my video. So really, you shouldn't even be watching this video. You should be watching that video. But if you are so here, I appreciate your time and hope you're gonna stick around. I don't wanna retread too much of the ground that she did in her video because she already did a very good job laying the groundwork. But to quickly get to it, notes, I'm referencing my notes. You should feel very important. She does bring up that the conclusions brought by the research paper they do not claim are actually conclusive, and that they're rather bold and they need more research. That type of stuff is just one article. You need to look more into it. It's also given the context of the fact that not a lot of people of the Victorian era went to the doctors and changes in medical science. It's rather difficult to draw some conclusions. This research article that she brought up at least seems to have found something very interesting regarding nutrition that was referred to as the golden age of nutrition. And here, after I summarize the important bits of her video relevant to here, I'm going to discuss why, to me, it's not very surprising, and also why, sadly, I have zero expectation that we are going to reproduce this golden age of diet and health today. Not that it's impossible. It is actually, on an individual basis from our own conscious effort, absolutely possible, in my opinion, to reproduce this. But as a whole, I do not see it coming to pass. I see aliens invading us as a more probable future for us than bringing back this golden age of nutrition. You'll see why, I'm pretty sure. Please spare me a little bit of sympathy. Having to read my own handwriting is... Sorry, Mom. I understand now. So one of the reasons, before I get into it, is you hear today for almost everything that is brought up, whether it's depression or a health issue or nearly everything, eat healthy and exercise is like thrown as one of the first rounds of solutions for just about everything. The way it's so casually thrown around as a solution to try for everything is because it is like nearly a panacea. And yeah, this period, what we're about to discuss, is kind of highlighting how significant that physical activity and high quality diet are, and why it's thrown around as, at very least, a partial solution to just about everything you can hear about. You have weight problems, whether too much or too little. You have emotional issues, psychological issues, various pains. You have osteoporosis. Like the amount of things, exercise and improve your diet is a valid, at least partial solution, is astounding. That's what this, anyway, I'm gonna continue before I start. Sorry. So the period being discussed here is referred to as the mid-Victorian period. Particularly, as I understand it, the research article referenced in Keanu's video was regarding London, England. Now I need to make that clear. I live in Texas, so the entire world is in Texas. I know there's a Paris, Texas, and who knows what other names of cities. I don't even want to try to remember offhand. Like, some of the names are so ridiculous that they actually seem satirical. Gun Barrel City, that is an actual city here in Texas. That sounds like the name of a city someone who is making fun of Texas would make up, but I know it's real. I go there usually twice a week for work-related purposes. It's real. Mid-Victoria period, which for the video discussed, it was about around the 1850s to the 1880s. Now, I'm not going to go into all the details for why having very good health markers and a long average life expectancy is very impressive for this period, because she already did such a good job laying out a lot of the, to put it charitably, complications to having a long and healthy life that would have existed in Victorian England. Just to bring up one that she did not specifically mention, is it is in this period that hand washing is invented. I, in my genius, did not write down the name of the guy as I was taking notes. I'm human. Did not write down his name, but starting around in the 1850s is when, like, a doctor or something had this suspicion that maybe after a doctor just dissects a cadaver, he shouldn't go straight to delivering a baby without washing his hands. Not like, I know this is a very like big brain concept, but after just handling a corpse with your bare hands, you shouldn't go straight to delivering a baby with same bare hands unwashed. It was a very controversial opinion at the time that I think ended up actually basically leaving this doctor's life in absolute ruin, because apparently that was also offensive to the doctors, that they should have to wash their hands and that it's their fault the moms and the babies were dying after they just handled a corpse. That's one of the things that was happening. We had not invented hand washing during this period. And also, not related to this, but I find it very amusing, during this same period, and especially, most especially before this period, if you had traveled into the past and told somebody of your experience, let's say going to the zoo and seeing a gorilla, to them, that would seem about as plausible as how most people react to someone telling you about their Bigfoot experience. The reason being is this is also the period where the West discovered gorillas. Between 1847 and 1861, there were a few events ranging from the earliest, the first scientific description of a gorilla, to the first like actual Western explorers seeing them in person, to the first actual dead specimen being like shipped back home to be looked at. So before like the 1850s approximately, a story of you seeing a gorilla was akin to a story of you seeing Bigfoot. I just find that amusing. Something we take for granted now is, in the grand scheme of things, a relatively recent discovery, both hand washing and gorillas. So anyway, to continue and get back on point, London, England, and a lot of the Victorian period and any like heavily industrializing urban environment was not really the highest quality place to be living, not a place where you would expect a long, healthy life, and also where you're not expect a lot of kids to make it. But despite the conditions that they lived in at the time, after you factor out infant and young child mortality, the adults actually had a life expectancy rivaling modern day first world countries, and depending on the exact age you're looking at, even beating some like the States. Because despite all our modern medicine and advancements in scientific technology and all of this stuff, because we eat like absolute, we cannot outlive people from almost 200 years ago before we invented washing your hands. Anyway, where was I? The specific ages mentioned in the video were an average life expectancy, if you live past 5 years old, average life expectancy for a male was 75 years, and for a female was 73 years, which rivals or potentially even beats us today in some cases. So a few things of note is that this predominantly only applied to the working class, not the wealthy, who you think they have more money, they should have more access to medical care. They also were the ones to have access to indoor plumbing and high quality food. You think that it would be them? No, it was the working class. Ironically, the poorer, not the poorest of the poor, but the poorer, the working class people who had this exceptional health. Also, there were no desk jobs, no sedentary jobs. About as sedentary as you could probably get if you were of working age is, for instance, Kiana mentioned in her video that, for instance, if you're a woman, you might be a stay-at-home seamstress. But those types of less active jobs were the minority. And even if you were a woman, a wife that stayed at home, you still had chores, and there were no labor-saving devices for the most part at this time. There were no dishwashers, there were no washing machines, no drying machines. All that was done by hand, and no indoor plumbing. So if you lived on like the third-story apartment and needed to wash your clothes, you had to go out to a well or something, bring those buckets of water back up, and then do all that hand washing by hand. So even chores were labor intensive. Then for those who worked, which both men and women, because yes, some women also already at that time were going to factories because this was an industrializing urban society. So if you worked outside of the home and you had to go to a factory or some other job, all jobs for the most part, once again, labor intensive, you had to walk to them upwards of 6 miles a day, which is already more activity than a lot of Americans get. And that's just for the commute, not including the potentially 8 to 10 hour workday. Once again, to make this very clear, all manual labor. So you have 6 miles a day potentially of walking, plus 8 to 10 miles, up to 6 days a week of manual labor. And even if you weren't walking to work, because you didn't have to work, if you stayed at home, all the chores were labor intensive and no labor saving devices, and you were still on your feet a lot. Unless, like I said, you were in one of those few jobs where you were to stay at home and do something like a seamstress. That's, like, as I understand it, a minority of cases. Most everything that everyone did, physically labor intensive, and even of anything you do for fun, for leisure, also likely involved, moving your body to some extent, unless you read and had access to books. But that there was no scrolling on your phone, no TV, no comfy leisure activities either, pretty much. So because of all this increased activity, there was a massive increase in necessary calories from 150% to 200%, as she referenced in the video, which means for women up to 3,000 calories a day, and for men up to 5,000 calories a day. For me, I'm slightly above average height and significantly above average lean mass, so I have a higher basal metabolic rate, plus because of my job, I'm significantly more active than the average American. And for me, my average calories, I've been tracking them for a while, they tend, for my expenditure based on how my weight fluctuates and what I eat, they tend to vary between about 3,500 to 4,200 calories for me to maintain my weight. And I'm an above average sized person. Here we're talking the average sized male, due to their high amount of physical activity, could potentially need as much or more food than I need to maintain their weight, just because of how active they are, even if they were a significantly smaller person. So that is a lot of physical activity, drastically more than how much people need to eat today. So very high amount of physical activity. Also, they ate lots of carbs. She goes in the video and details for why it was, but a very particular blend of circumstances causing lots of very cheap, high quality fruits and vegetables being available to them. And because they were cheap and people, they were working class, they didn't have extra money. So the luxuries for them were bread, potatoes, and meat. So the cheap food to fill them up was all these cheap fruits and vegetables that they ate. And once again, even though the regular cuts of meat that we consider regular cuts of meat were sort of seen as luxury items, they often couldn't afford that. So they often had the undesirable cuts, as we would consider them. So fish heads, the organs of the animal, and all this other stuff that we normally don't eat, all of those things were the primary things they ate when they could afford to. Stark contrast to how we eat today. If we eat fruits and vegetables, they're not nearly as high of quality, and we pretty much just eat the muscle meat of the animals and fish as well. And she actually did say a very good quote, which I believe is an excellent point.
You know, in the modern world, the focus tends to be on what not to eat. But in reality, maybe our focus should be tilted more toward eating more of the right stuff.
And it was actually doing that, which is how there was a period where I accidentally went vegetarian because I was so focused on trying to get more vegetables into my diet, while still out of habit using eggs as my main source of protein because they were cheap and easy to cook, that I just, by focusing on what to eat, I ate so many more vegetables, we'll keep it in the eggs and such, that it kind of phased out additional animal products. So the concept of focusing on what to eat instead of what not to eat, I definitely agree with that. So to get to my point why I'm discussing this, hearing this isn't a very big surprise to me, the concept that despite their circumstances, for much less advanced medical and scientific understanding, the very poor living conditions at the time and the high stress that they very likely experienced, I'm not surprised to hear that those that survived into adulthood were able to live the healthy lives, because 3 fundamental things I noticed. 1, very high levels of physical activity. 2, very high amounts of high quality fruits and vegetables. And 3, when they had animal products, they were very high quality animal products, because they ate the entire animal, all those other organs and stuff, which you've doubtlessly heard. Well, maybe you've heard, if you've heard of it, because of the carnivore trend popping up, and I'm trying to talk about how eating organ meats and how like the liver and the heart and the brain and all that's good, and kind of making like another fad or a little trend of it. These people were doing that out of necessity, combined with all the vegetables and all the physical activity. Like, those are all the things that we're hearing now, trying to tell people to do these things. These are good. Eat all the animal, because there's so many more nutrients in all these other organs. Eat your freaking vegetables and your fruits, but also try to get them from high quality sources. Make them as nutrient dense as you can, and also get lots of activity. It's nothing new, but it's something we've been trying to push, and that's why it's not surprising, because I've seen for years all these things independently, people trying to encourage you to do. For instance, regarding the high physical activity, I am not typically much one to reference studies, but in terms of step count, that is something that has been studied multiple times. As I understand the data, there is a trend where the higher average step count you can have, the generally just better all of your health outcomes are. Like, if it's a step count that you can maintain every day, I am not aware of them finding an upper limit to where there are significant diminishing returns or detrimental effects to increasing the average daily step count. As long as it's a regular amount that you can maintain and adapt to, it seems that the higher the step count, the better your health, as far as I've seen. I know I've seen a study looking into up to 16,000 steps a day. I don't know if there's been other studies since then discussing it, but because of all the walking they do, but also all the physical activity, and this isn't even like structured, specific training meant to help you. It was just in a time where there was not OSHA and other work safety things protecting workers, and so it was doubtlessly very brutal manual labor, not meant to be safe or to get you healthy, but the fact that their bodies were being used that much. We are very adaptable creatures. We are not well suited for a life of ease. And because we're so adaptable, if we have a life of ease, we adapt to that. It's almost as if being able to be healthy in your late years and have a high quality of life later in life is a side effect of adaptations for not having an easy life, because it's all that physical activity that your body has to adapt to, along with being fed by a high quality diet, the high quality plant foods and the high quality animal foods, along with sufficient rest, which, because I didn't have Netflix they could stay up late watching or anything like that. I mean, at the end of if you walked a round trip of 6 miles on foot to and from work and work 10 hours of manual labor that day, are you going to stay up late any later than you have to once you get home? I highly doubt it. Early industrialization, so not tons of artificial lights. I don't even know offhand how many of them would even have electricity to be capable of staying up super late. Hopefully not to go on too long. Just from someone that's been immersed in the health and fitness industry for a while, seeing those 3 ingredients about the activity, all the fruits and vegetables, plus eating the entire animal. Independently, I've heard people push all those things on their own, sometimes making their own like weird fad about it, like vegans or carnivores. But when you combine those 3 independent ingredients into an environment like this, pretty easy to believe. I mean, they're still saying that, like they said, they still need to do further study. But from my take is it is highly plausible that, yeah, they could have had, despite the living conditions and their poor understanding of health and diseases and everything else for the period, that if they lived to adulthood, for that brief period in time that she referred to in the video as the golden age of nutrition, yeah, I can personally believe that they could have been incredibly healthy despite the circumstances. Bringing this up, one, just to put you to a good channel and a good video, but also to demonstrate why you hear exercise and eat healthy thrown around as like a solution to everything, because it is so substantial and so impactful that it can make up for a lot of other issues by equipping your body to be able to do what it needs to do. And remember, your brain, where all your emotions are processed, where all your thoughts are processed, which is the seat of our consciousness, is housed and fed and protected by your body. So if your body's in poor condition, do you think your body is in a good state to take care of your mind? I think I'll cut it off there. That should be hopefully good. And if you stuck around for all this, I appreciate the views. As I said in the beginning, I noticed that these videos tend to only get 100 to 200 views. So if you're one of those, sound off. Love to hear from you. Anyway, thanks guys.